This is the County Fair Podcast, where fair influencers share their valuable insights, strengthening and growing the long-lived tradition of the County Fair. The County Fair Podcast is brought to you by ShowWorks. ShowWorks fair entry software has set the gold standard for fairs across the United States and Canada for more than 20 years, serving more than 75% of the country's fairs. ShowWorks is in place to handle fair entries, billing, payouts, and the incorporation of virtual elements into your show and auction. Visit www.fairsoftware.com to learn more.
Welcome to the County Fair Podcast. I'm your host, Christina McFarling, and I am joined today by Tara Urbano, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine from UC Davis. She has an extensive background in livestock practice, including reproductive health, preventive medicine, and food safety. She attended UC Davis, earning a bachelor's in animal science in 2011 and her doctorate in veterinary medicine in 2016, as well as completing a clinical residency. She achieved diplomacy in the American College of Veterinary Preventive Medicine in 2019. Originally from Reedley, California, Dr. Urbano was involved in FFA with swine, caprine, poultry, and equine projects, and she served as resident shepherd at the UC Davis sheep facility during her undergraduate studies. Currently, she is a staff veterinarian for the UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine's Livestock Reproduction and Herd Health Service, where she serves as a clinician for a diverse client base, which includes youth showmen, seedstock, and show animal producers, backyard operations, large-scale commercial operations, and many of the fairs throughout Northern California. In her spare time, Dr. Urbano enjoys camping, yoga, reading, and hiking with her Labrador. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Urbano.
Thank you for having me. Yep, I get to live and work around Davis, California, up in the north of the state, and I love it so far.
I love it. So tell me a little bit about why you chose to go into veterinarian medicine.
So I kind of started out in agriculture and FFA and, I guess in middle school, and I'm from a really rural town. It's mostly tree crops, so orchard trees and then grapes. But I knew that I didn't really want to go into that. I wanted to go into animal agriculture. And I had kind of always thought I'd wanted to be a veterinarian. And once I got hooked on livestock, I kind of didn't look back. I knew that I wanted to be a livestock vet from, when I started college, and then kind of just continued with that. And I kind of decided that was kind of the best way for me to serve the animal ag industry to the best of my ability. So here I am still.
That's really awesome. At what age did you start to get involved with FFA?
So my freshman year, day one. So that would have been, I guess I was 14, right when you start high school. Before that, I had kind of done some horse project stuff, but I definitely didn't look back when I left that for livestock or for food animals.
Did you have other members in your family or friends that were doing it, or what was the catalyst for getting started?
Extended family had some cattle, but again, most of my extended family is all farming. Mm-hmm. My parents personally are an animal control officer and a nurse, so we didn't farm ourselves. But I guess I knew that I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, and so I decided that whole ag ed department at the high school is probably what I needed to start in, because they always offered, animal handling and the vet science courses. And so that's where I ended up.
What do you think you learned most during those high school years that prepped you for where you are now?
Definitely to learn by doing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Be able to get involved and not have to sit in the classroom all the time. You've got labs and outdoor classes, things that you wouldn't normally get your hands on. You learn to castrate pigs day one.
Yeah.
And plenty of other hands-on things. And that's definitely what drew me in and has set me up to continue doing that. And so it's definitely part of my teaching style now. I teach a lot of fourth year senior clinical veterinary students. And so that learn by doing, that's kind of been ingrained since I was 14. So 20 years now, it definitely is still majorly my teaching style with my vet students. So
that's a great way to learn, and very impactful and memorable, and really helps apply things as you continue through. Obviously, you were picking up, having these projects, and then did y'all have a local county show that you attended, or where did you end up doing with these projects?
So my county fair is the Big Fresno Fair.
Okay.
I've
been to that one.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. So the big Fresno Fair, did that every fall. I mostly just brought the swine there, market, and a couple breeding sows, depending on the year, some gelts. Otherwise, the projects were just marketed. The equine projects were marketed through a horse trainer, and I made commission for my projects. And then the poultry projects, I sold eggs out of the ag science department. So
that's fantastic. I love how the variety that you had, and I don't know how you kept them all straight. You'd have to use your days very wisely.
It was a lot of early mornings and late afternoons after school, but I wouldn't change it. I had a lot of fun as a kid, so I learned a lot.
So, I know that you are definitely in tune, just with the health, animal health. What are some of the things? A lot of people that listen to this are, county fair goers, and they have their animals, they're bringing them to the show. What are some things that people who may need to be aware of when they start a project, when they get their pig the very first time, and they're seeing it all the way through to the county fair? What do they need to be thinking about as they're raising these animals?
So, thinking about the future, what is our end goal here? We're trying to make wholesome, safe food for our population. And we're also trying to be ambassadors and representatives of our industry for these fairgoers, the public, the general public. And so thinking about that throughout raising that animal, I think is going to help connect them to their end goal. And, my responsibilities at the fair, I have a few different ones. I'll do health inspections when they check in, depending on the county. Sometimes we're doing drug residue testing, like at our state fair. A lot of state fairs do that. And then, they usually have a drug declaration form that I will review and make sure that the animals, followed appropriate withdrawal intervals on any medications they've gotten, make sure that they're suitable to be harvested at the end of the fair. And then I end up doing, some veterinary care, depending on what happens during the fair time. Hopefully nothing. Usually it's nothing, but occasionally something, will injure themselves or get sick in some way. And we're there to help fix them up.
Do you see are you typically on the grounds at the fairs, or do you see a lot of animals before they get to that point?
So we see some fair animals beforehand. And so I think that's like kind of, if I've got a client or if I, had advice for showmen beforehand, if they don't have a veterinarian right now, that they should think at the beginning of their project, they should think about who they would call if they have an issue ahead of time. So you're not panicking. You can call and introduce yourselves. We like hearing from you guys, and we want you guys to be successful too. So, call and introduce yourselves, and, let them know what you're doing, and have them, have their phone number ready in case you need it. My other advice is to read through your county fairs or your state fairs. Some states have a show and fair board that has published health rules and requirements. And so reading through those in advance and having an idea of what we're looking for when we check in your animal to make sure that it's healthy, so that you can monitor your animal, daily, ideally, weekly. You guys, the kids have their hands on these animals every day. And so it can become routine to just have a quick glance, look in their mouth, look at their eyes, make sure they don't have pink eye or irritation, and address it before it gets worse. And hopefully this is all going to happen weeks before the fair, and you've got plenty of time to heal. If you notice something a week before the fair, sometimes we can't turn it around, even with as much as a veterinarian can try. Sometimes we can't turn it around, or it may need medications that mean that it wouldn't be able to be slaughtered or harvested at your fair, at their normal date. But we want you to get to the fair. We want you to represent animal agriculture to the best of your ability. And we want you to have fun. That's a big one. So I'd say definitely reading through the rules in advance and seeing what's allowed, what's not allowed. Does your heifer need a bangs tag and a vaccine before it goes to the fair? Not a lot of states require that anymore, but if it's a dairy heifer, it will. So things like that.
So, obviously you see all of the types of animals that come through. What, if you were to go through, what are some of the most common requirements that y'all see in your area for health requirements for your beef and for your swine and for your poultry?
Okay. So I think the overarching theme here is we're looking for infectious diseases. So anything that's contagious, including we have a group of diseases that are called zoonotic diseases. And those can be passed between, different species of animals and also to humans. And so those especially are the ones that we really worry about coming into public display. And then we're also looking for unsightly conditions. So I'll kind of touch on each species and which ones we might be worried about. But, anything that's going to make, especially a member of the public who isn't around livestock very often, say, pause and say, oh, what's that?
What's going on with that one?
And it may be harmless to the animal, but we want to put our best foot forward. We're not trying to hide it necessarily, but a really bad sunburn on a pig that's healing may not be painful for the animal. The animal is still fit for human consumption, but it may not be fit for public display, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Because someone could walk by and say, oh, that looks like it hurts. Yeah. Why is that animal here?
Yes.
And we're trying to show the public the best of the best. And unfortunately, that means sometimes some of our livestock aren't able to stay at the fair for the whole time. So again, like the contagious and unsightly things. And then any other condition that may make the animal unfit for human consumption. Very rare. It would have to be very, very sick. I haven't had to address that, but it's something we look for. And that's something that I teach my students to look for as they're checking through. But yeah, I can start with the species and kind of run through what I look for. So for our swine, I rarely need to put my hands on them. It's always just kind of a visual. sorry, backtracking. For all of our species, we prefer to look at them coming off the trailer. So that before they go into the showgrounds, we can make sure that they're free of disease and are fit for show and consumption. Especially important at shows that have breeding animals.
Mm-hmm.
So these animals that are terminal, these market animals that are all going to go and be harvested at the fair, they're not going to be returning to their farm of origin or their high school or the kid's house where there may be other animals. But the breeding animals are going to go to the fair for a week or two, and then they're going to go home. And we want to make sure that animals that breeding animal are in contact with are all healthy and not going to take they're not going to get infected with something and take it home.
Take it back to their home.
Other animals. And that's another one of our really big goals here is we want to make sure the animals that you have at home that you've invested in are safe.
Yes.
From someone bringing something back from the fair. But I can start with swine. Again, mostly a distance exam, visual. I don't want to stress them out. It's usually pretty warm at a lot of fair turn-ins. And so I want to make sure that they can pen in and go get cooled off as quick as possible. But, we're looking at skin for, like I mentioned, sunburns earlier, really bad fighting wounds, depending on how far it's healed. Someone might see that and say, well, why does this pig have wounds all over it?
Right.
And we understand that pigs fight, but sometimes it's hard to get other people to understand that.
Yes.
I'm looking for unsightly things like unhealed chewed ears and chewed tails, unhealed castration sites. I think most of our show pigs are castrated, a few months before fair still, and they can, if not as, little tiny piglets, and they're healed by the time they come to the fair. But every once in a while, we get one that was castrated a little late, and they're still big. We leave those open, big open scabs. Not necessarily great for public display, even though it's non-painful and it's healing and it's not infected. It still raises questions, right? We rarely see ringworm on pigs. That comes into play in usually our sheep, sometimes goats and cattle. And so we'll chat about that when we talk about those species. Swine, otherwise, I'm looking at, eyes, nose, mouth, make sure there's no major crusties. I know that things get dust in their eyes in the trailer. And so we definitely separate that out. Make sure that no one's coughing like crazy, that there's no rectal prolapses that are hanging out and not fit for public display. To have a prolapse hanging out of an animal, as well as a visible prolapse repair. So like a purse string or something, we try not to have those on display for the public. Again, not because it's an inappropriate treatment, but because it might give them pause and say, why am I eating lamb?
There's such a responsibility with the fair and the public that's going to come through. And, some of these people, this is their animal experience. This is the only interaction they're going to get with these breeds. And so, putting the best foot forward and showing them how, wonderful and fit and, these animals are is really important.
Yeah. And how well cared for and fit and beautiful. And, like exactly what you said, this is sometimes the only interaction they have with a live animal, of whatever species that they're consuming. So they've got a steak on their plate at home and they see a steer once a year at the fair.
Yes.
That's their connection to us.
Yes.
That's important. We need it to be a good connection. So, going back to swine, we're also looking for like severe lamenesses, which we rarely see. Luckily, not much comes to the fair lame. Anything else that's odd or could be infectious, we might examine them a little further.
Yes.
I'll usually send them to the wash rack to go cool down, and then I'll come in once they're relaxed and have a really good exam, hands-on exam. For small ruminants, so our sheep and goats, a ringworm is our big one. And ringworm is ignored largely for our jackpot shows, right? Those aren't necessarily public domain, but our county fairs where the public is coming in, we really worry about these, like I said, zoonotic, those diseases that can pass from humans to animals and animals to humans. There are plenty of members from the public who are immunocompromised, or they might have a tiny baby at home, or an elderly person living in their home with them. And we want to make sure they don't carry anything back to someone like that. Or if they're immunocompromised themselves, that they aren't infected with, ringworm is one, sore mouth in our small ruminants. So those scabs in the mouth are really, really contagious to people. And they aren't a huge risk for those of us who are healthy necessarily, although they can be unsightly. So again, they can be unsightly, and then we can infect members of the public, and we really, really don't want to do that.
No. You don't want the outbreak starting at your fair.
No. You don't need someone bringing it home and having their, grandma get orf and, them tracing it back. Well, my only exposure to a sheep or goat was, at this county fair that we went to last week. And, we don't need that. Critters with diarrhea, the same thing. That happened a very long time ago, maybe 20 years ago at one of our county fairs in California. Someone got salmonella or E. coli. And that was before they put all the hand washing stations in, and so now the fairs are being proactive as well. So hopefully that's minimized, but, diarrheal things, anything that an immunocompromised person or young or old person could potentially be exposed to.
Yeah.
We would really, and we don't want the general public to get ringworm all over their arms.
No.
After having one of our sheep that has ringworm. Otherwise, for our small ruminants, we'll see rectal prolapse sometimes. So I want to make sure that's, if it's been repaired, that repair is healed. No purse strings.
Yes.
You're asking why there's a little bow above the butt. We're again looking
that was just hard to explain to little people.
It's very hard to explain. Adults could probably understand it,
yes.
Especially because we say, we worked with a veterinarian and things, but yes, it's hard to explain sometimes. Otherwise, we're looking at eyes, nose, mouth, ears, making sure that there's no, pink eye, something that could be contagious to our other animals in the barn. Again, I said trailer rides are dusty. There's always going to be a few little crusties on eyes and nose after a trailer ride, but they shouldn't be severe. Another big thing in our small ruminants that is contagious to other animals is our CL abscesses, so cysts that they'll get over their lymph nodes. Not so much a big deal for our mark animals, right? They're terminal, but if a CL cyst were to rupture at the fair and there's a breeding animal in the pen next door, that breeding animal could be infected. And if it comes from a clean herd and brings it home, that's a big opening for CL to kind of run rampant in that herd. And so we try to really screen for that, and usually things that have abscesses or cysts that look like they're going to be ripe don't get to stay at the fair, unfortunately. And so that's a big one that you or your veterinarian can see ahead of time and maybe treat and have it healed and scarred over by the time they come to the fair. That would be so that they're not contagious anymore. That was one of the hardest ones to deal with is those abscesses.
How frequently do animals have those abscesses?
It depends on their origin,
Mm-hmm.
Where they're coming from. Some farms have more animals infected than others. Like I said, some herds are completely clean,
Mm-hmm.
have none of it. And so they don't have to worry. Maybe once a year for all the county fairs that I go to, I have to send something home for it.
For that.
And I hate doing that. I don't want to send anything home from the fair. They've worked so hard to get them here. They've, fed them and worked with them, and they've put in a lot of hours. And I respect that, and I want them to stay, which is why I'm here. I'm hoping that some of this advice will help somebody, weeks before the fair say, oh, I need, either my advisor needs to help me with this, or we need to call in a veterinarian and figure out a plan so that this is healed or healthy or sightly, presentable by the time we're at the fair. And that's what I try and do with any of the clients that I have. So some of my showman clients or seedstock producers even that are advising some kids, or selling animals to kids, trying to get them to think ahead and have some idea of what to look for.
Showworks Auction is taking junior livestock shows and sales by storm, raising more money than ever before for these kids. And as the leader in integrated live and online auctions, there's a viable solution to enhance every fair's auction. Check out www.fairsoftware.com today.
That's one question I have for you. You're very active at the fair on those days and leading up to it. Do you have, I'm assuming you have clients that are breeders and that, you're working directly at some point with these advisors that are working with the kids at their schools potentially, or, how you talked a little bit about educating and getting the information out as soon as you can, but, what do you do anything specific ahead of the fair with these groups to try and get them up to speed, or?
So not yet, but I'm working on having either through extension. I'm kind of trying to work with some extension agents right now to put together something for, our 4-H and FFA clubs to have ahead of time. It's never really been available. And that's why I contacted you, because I'm just trying to look for some avenues right now to get word out, because I don't want anyone to be surprised at the fair either. Every once in a while people will come and say, yeah, I kind of was worried that this wouldn't pass. We understand. Of course, we'll go home. And I don't want that to happen. I want them to know who to call beforehand or who to ask. And so I'm hoping that through extension or UC extension programs that we can get word out to, all the FFAs and the 4-H's and the Grange organizations. But we're also happy to answer questions ahead of time. FFA advisors, if they want to know what to look for, I can't give true medical advice over the phone without having a client veterinarian relationship. So we'd have to either visit in person or they bring the animal in. But I'm happy to, answer questions and phone calls about things and help them interpret the fair rules if they need it over the phone and what to look for.
I'm visualizing the kids come home with this list of mom.
Yes.
That's
what it is.
And that mom going, well, this is our first year showing and I need an interpreter.
Yes. And that's what we're trying to bridge right now is that, take that rules document and make it digestible for different ages. And I don't know, I can't remember. I think does Texas use youth for the quality care of animals, the quality assurance program?
I don't know for certain.
I can't remember if it's required in Texas. It's required in California and a few other states for junior showmen. And I'm actually on their board. And so we're doing a curriculum review, and I'm going to try and make sure that, as the only veterinarian on the board, I'm going to try to make sure that health information is digestible, for all ages, because we have everything from the, under 8s to seniors in high school. And so the curriculum gets adjusted as they move through the years. So yes, that's a big, big goal for me in the next couple years, is figure out how to make this outreach digestible for everyone, and not just in some rules document, at the county level or at the state level. I want this information. I'm not doing anything secret at the fair. There's no secrets here. I want everyone to know what I'm looking for and why it's important.
Well, it's such important work, and definitely a service that is needed. It's something that's always been there, but definitely a role that matters for the success of the kids that are showing and their animals that they're bringing to the fair. So thank you for that. And thank you for, investing in other future veterinarians that are going to be doing the same.
I am.
I think that's got to be rewarding, getting the opportunity to practice and teach as well.
It's really enjoyable. I do. It's a very fun job. I worked in private practice, and I loved private practice. I really, I could never not be in clinical practice. I love clients. I like working with people, private clients and public clients, but the teaching aspect of my job is a blast. And, I get to teach everything from, my vet students to undergrads that might be on our campus units, to junior showmen and clients. And so it's a lot of fun, the teaching and outreach part of my job. I don't think I covered cattle or poultry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I do want to talk about cattle and poultry.
I mean, those are pretty simple. Other unsightly things might be very, very large warts or multiple warts, 1 or 2 little warts on the face or on the neck. We're not going to talk about. But when they become, again, we don't want someone to look at it and say, ew, what's on this animal's face?
Right.
There's definitely a line there that we can cross from the tiny little warts that, just look like beauty marks to the big, swollen, irritated warts.
Yes.
And then birds and small animals, luckily, the state inspector usually comes in for those.
Fantastic.
So it's usually the same person that would be doing like processing plant inspections.
Yes.
And they're usually looking for, feet, so bumblefoot and other foot diseases. They're looking for our big contagious diseases, right? Avian influenza is, we're in a big outbreak right now. So they'll be looking for, facial swellings, nasal and nose and eye discharges. They're going to be looking for coughing. They're going to look in the bird's mouth and make sure there's not a bunch of mucus being coughed up, things like that. So those infectious diseases are really important. They're very, very, very contagious across birds. And so we don't want anything to come into the fair, especially with these kids who've got these beautiful, showmanship and breeding birds that are going to go back to their farms. And we don't want them to take anything like avian influenza or exotic Newcastle disease back with them. So the birds are looked at very, very closely. Otherwise, we're looking for, keel wounds from those little broilers that like to just lay in front of the feeder
Yes.
for
Yes.
days. And then, like the rabbits and cabbies, we're looking at little, at their feet, looking for bumblefoot lesions, looking for discharges. And again, we have to keep current on our outbreaks. And so that hemorrhagic diarrhea outbreak in rabbits right now, we want to make sure that everything looks nice and healthy. Nothing with diarrhea, nothing with, snuffles coming from nose and eyes. And so that's probably, I think, covered all the species.
Yeah. How, when you look at a show schedule, there's so much time that you look that's blocked out for, the arrival of the animals. And you're talking that, you're looking at them right when they're coming off of the trailers, if you can. How much time does it usually take for you? And it may be, per animal, or just, I typically do my lambs and goats in the morning, and then it's nice to have a break for the next day.
So yeah, it depends on the fair schedule. We have a lot of county fairs that everything turns in at the same time. They get a 4-hour window to haul their animals in. And luckily, because I'm one of 4 faculty veterinarians, and then we have 2 or 3 resident vets on our service at any given time, and then 2 or 3 students. So luckily we can roll with a pretty big posse. And so, I can say, okay, well, you're going to go on that lane, probably the pigs are going to go over there because it's nice and shady. Start over there. I'll be over here with small ruminants, and I'll send someone else to where the cattle are unloading. Some fairs, I end up doing them over the scale. And so that is a one by one, and I'll just work through the line. And it's usually a minute or less per animal, right? I'm not doing a full physical exam. I'm not, listening to lungs and heart with a stethoscope. It's mostly a visual inspection, a little bit of hands-on for like lymph things. But it's less than a minute per animal.
And you've already done a review of health records, or somebody has, typically before they get there.
Or they will turn it in when they go over the scale, and then we just get a stack of paperwork to look at. And then, if there's anything, they've passed our visual inspection already sometimes. If there's anything that we need to address further, then we'll go find them and chat and, see what happened and when and why. So
what else do you want to make sure that our listeners hear?
I think I've covered everything that, we chatted about: the who, what, when, where, and why.
Yes.
What I'm looking for. I mean, we really were there to support the showman, and the show. And, we're also looking out for public health at the same time, and food safety. And so, but the bottom line is, I want these showmen to, learn and enjoy the fair and have healthy and productive animals. And, we want them to sell them and get that check at the end of the day so they can invest it in their next project, or in college, or on that new saddle, or,
yes.
And yeah, I really want them to have fun and have a good time and a good experience.
Well, good. Your insights definitely are going to help with that. So thank you for all of that. I want to wrap up with your favorite county fair memories, or what you enjoy looking back of what it meant to you, or something fun that might have happened, or something memorable.
I mean, I think the most important lesson that I look back on very often still, I think that's what I'm going to share.
Okay.
It was the first pig I got my freshman year of high school. And my ag teacher's husband raises a bunch of show pigs, and he'll haul some in from out of state. And so I picked a Duroc, And I'm pretty like animated and high strung. I can control it now, but I used to not be able to. So it's day one. I've got my pig out. We're on the softball field trying to practice, right? These pigs are running everywhere. And being a high strung 14-year-old, I'm chasing my pig like with my stick in the air. I knew nothing. And our advisor's husband, who's, trying to help teach, and he comes and he grabs me by the shoulders and he's like, you need to calm down or you're going to kill your pig. And that is the moment that I learned to switch it on and off and when to calm down. And that's honestly probably been the most helpful advice I've gotten for my career, for life.
Say with animals, with people.
Exactly. When do you need to shut up and stop? Excuse me. That was kind of rude sounding. Like when you need to stop and calm down and not escalate the situation any further. And that's probably like the biggest lesson I learned from showing. And it was from day one. And it's helped with so many things. Again, people and animals and everything. So
I'm picturing you running around the softball field chasing a pig.
I'm only like 5 feet tall. And at that point, I'm 14. I was probably 85 pounds soaking wet and running around with a show stick screaming.
That's awesome.
I've come a long way.
I love it. So, well, Dr. Urbano, it has been a pleasure hearing from you today, and I appreciate you for sharing your wisdom with us. And I look forward to, I'll include your contact information just in our bio on the podcast. So if anyone wants to reach out or has questions, they can do so. So thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you very much for having me, and good luck to everyone, all the listeners this show season.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the County Fair Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend, and tell us what you'd like to hear on the show by going to www.countyfairpodcast.com. And until next time, may God bless you.